I'd barely finished changing out of my blood-stained scrubs when I pushed through the heavy door of Rosso, desperate to escape the downpour that had turned Manhattan's streets into rivers. November had arrived with a vengeance, and I'd spent the last 12 hours at the emergency veterinary clinic trying to save a golden retriever that had been hit by a taxi. We lost him 20 minutes before my shift ended. The jeans and sweater I'd pulled on felt wrong somehow, too normal for a night where nothing felt normal. The warmth inside the Italian bar hit me like a wall, steam rising from my soaked burgundy jacket as I stood dripping on the polished hardwood floor. The place was nearly empty, just a handful of people scattered across the leather booths that lined the brick walls. Soft jazz played from speakers I couldn't see, mixing with the low murmur of conversation and the clink of glasses. I made my way to the bar, peeling off my jacket and draping it over the stool beside me. My fingers were still trembling slightly, the adrenaline from the failed surgery refusing to fade. 2 months in this city. 2 months since I'd left Boston, and a relationship that had slowly suffocated me, and I still wasn't used to the relentless pace of working in Manhattan. "What can I get you?" The bartender appeared, his white shirt crisp despite the late hour. He looked me over with the practiced neutrality of someone who'd seen everything. "Hot chocolate," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. "With a shot of whiskey." He nodded once and disappeared. I pressed my palms against the cool mahogany of the bar, trying to ground myself. The golden retriever's owner had been a little girl, maybe 7 years old. The way she'd screamed when I came out to deliver the news would haunt me for weeks. My hand drifted to the small silver necklace at my throat, the tiny pendant shaped like half of a heart. I'd worn it every day for 15 years, a habit so ingrained I barely noticed it anymore. Val had given it to me the night before I was adopted, pressing the matching half into my palm with tears streaming down her face. "So you never forget me," she'd whispered. I never did forget, but I'd lost her anyway. The bartender returned with my drink in a ceramic mug, steam curling from the surface. I wrapped both hands around it, letting the heat seep into my skin. Through the window, I watched the storm continue its assault on the city. People rushing past with newspapers held over their heads, car horns blaring at the flooded intersections. I was halfway through my drink when the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't dramatic, not at first, just a subtle change in the energy of the room, like the barometric pressure dropping before a tornado. The conversations at the nearby tables grew quieter. The bartender straightened, his casual demeanor replaced with something sharper, more alert. Then the door opened. 3 men entered, but only one commanded attention. He was tall, easily 6'3", with black hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone. Dark eyes, strong jaw, olive skin still holding summer's tan despite the winter chill. His charcoal suit fit him with the precision that came from custom tailoring, every line accentuating broad shoulders and a lean, powerful frame. But it wasn't his appearance that made my breath catch. It was the way everyone else reacted. The bartender moved immediately to pour something without being asked. The couple at the nearest booth fell silent mid-conversation. Even the jazz seemed to quiet, though I knew that was impossible. The man moved through the space with absolute confidence, flanked by his companions. One was tall and heavily built, his nose clearly broken more than once. The other was leaner, with cold eyes that swept the room in constant assessment. They were heading toward the private area at the back when the lean one spoke, so quietly I almost missed it. But the effect was immediate. The man in the charcoal suit stopped walking and turned, his gaze following the direction his companion indicated. Toward me. I froze, the mug halfway to my lips. His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that felt physical, like being pinned by a spotlight. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, we stared at each other across the dim interior of the bar. Then his gaze dropped, traveling down to where I'd pushed up the sleeves of my dark gray sweater, to my left forearm, to the scar. His expression changed so completely, it was like watching a mask shatter. The casual confidence vanished, replaced by something sharp and dangerous. He was moving before I could process what was happening, crossing the distance between us with startling speed. "Let me see your arm." His voice was deep, smooth, with the barest trace of an Italian accent threading through his words. "Excuse me?" I managed. setting down my mug with shaking hands. He didn't repeat himself. Instead, his hand shot out and gripped my wrist, not painfully but with unmistakable authority. He yanked my arm toward him, turning it so the inside of my forearm was exposed under the bar's lighting. The scar was old, faded to a pale pink line against my skin. 2 letters intertwined in a shape that could have been abstract art if you didn't know what you were looking at. A V inside another V, the lines crossing at specific points that had been carefully planned by 2 little girls with a piece of broken glass. Who are you? The man's grip tightened slightly, his eyes never leaving the scar. Where did you get this? My heart hammered against my ribs. I don't know what you're talking about. Let go of me. Not until you answer my question. He looked up then, and I saw something in his face that made my stomach drop. Pain. Deep, aching pain hiding behind the anger. Who are you? The bigger man had materialized behind me, blocking any escape route. The lean one stood to my right, his hand resting inside his jacket in a way that suggested a weapon. The other patrons had suddenly found reasons to look anywhere else, their drinks becoming fascinating. My name is Emma Collins, I said, forcing the words out past my tight throat. I'm a veterinarian. I work at Eastside Animal Emergency. I've never seen you before in my life, and I have no idea why you care about an old scar. When did you get it? His thumb pressed against the scar, tracing one of the lines. How long ago? 15 years, I whispered. When I was 12. Now please, let go. His jaw tightened. Come with me. What? No. I'm not going anywhere with you people. It wasn't a request. He released my wrist, but only to gesture sharply toward the back of the bar. You can walk, or Marco can carry you. Your choice. The bigger man, Marco, apparently, took a step closer. I looked at the bartender, hoping for some intervention, some help. He was studiously polishing a glass, his eyes fixed on his work. No one was going to help me. I was alone with these men who clearly operated outside normal rules, and refusing would only make things worse. Fine, I said, sliding off the stool. My legs felt unsteady, adrenaline flooding my system for the 2nd time that night. But if you hurt me, I'm screaming. No one's going to hurt you, Miss Collins. The man's voice had softened fractionally, though his expression remained granite. I just want to talk. He led the way toward a door I hadn't noticed before, tucked beside the bar. It opened onto a narrow hallway that smelled of aged wood and expensive cologne. Another door at the end, this one heavy oak with a brass handle. Inside was an office that spoke of serious money. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, a massive desk that dominated the space. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined one wall, filled with leather-bound volumes that looked antique. A single lamp cast golden light across the desk's surface. The man gestured to one of the chairs facing the desk. Sit, I sat. Marco took up position by the door while the lean man disappeared back into the bar. The man in the charcoal suit moved behind the desk, opening a drawer. When he pulled out the photograph, my world tilted. It was old, faded around the edges, but the image was clear. A young woman, maybe 19 or 20, laughing at something off camera. Dark hair cascading over one shoulder, warm brown eyes crinkled with joy. And there, on her left forearm, clearly visible as she reached toward whoever held the camera, was a scar identical to mine. No, I breathed, my hand flying to my mouth. No, that's not possible. You recognize her. Another statement, not a question. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed completely, tears burning behind my eyes, because I did recognize her. She was older in this photo, grown up and beautiful, but I would know that face anywhere. I'd memorized it during 4 years of sharing a cramped room in an underfunded orphanage, studying it in the dark when nightmares woke me, finding safety in her presence. Val, I finally managed, the nickname tearing from my chest. That's Valentina. The man lowered himself slowly into his chair, his eyes never leaving my face. How do you know that name? She was my friend. The words tumbled out now, unstoppable. My best friend. We were at Santa Agnes together, the orphanage in Chicago. From the time I was 8 until I got adopted at 12, we shared everything. We were like sisters. Tell me about the scar. I looked down at my arm, at the mark I'd carried for half my life. We made them the night before I left. We knew I was being adopted the next morning, and Val, she didn't want us to forget each other. She said we needed something permanent, something that would always connect us. The memory crashed over me with painful clarity. Val's face in the dim light of the dormitory bathroom, tears streaming as she held the piece of broken glass from a shattered mirror. Her hands shaking as she made the first cut on her own arm, then on mine, both of us biting down on rolled washcloths to muffle our cries. We mixed our blood, I continued, my own tears falling now. She said it meant we'd always be part of each other, no matter how far apart we were. The V stood for Valentina, but also for forever. We promised we'd find each other again when we grew up. The man's face had gone pale beneath his tan. He leaned forward, bracing his forearms on the desk. What else do you remember? Everything, I said simply. The way the dormitory smelled like old radiators and pine sol. How we'd sneak food from the kitchen after lights out and share it under our blankets. The director, Mr. Pellegrini, with his cold eyes and colder hands. The way kids would disappear sometimes, adopted out, they said. But we never saw them again. Val used to tell me stories at night, about the lives we'd have when we escaped. She wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to work with animals. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. After I was adopted, I tried to find her. For years, I tried. But the orphanage had burned down, and all the records were gone. It was like she'd never existed. Like those 4 years were just a dream. She existed. The man's voice was rough now, scraped raw. She was my wife. The word hit me like a fist. Wife? Valentina married me 6 years ago. He pulled another photo from the drawer, this one more recent. The same woman. Older now, standing beside the man currently sitting across from me. She wore a white dress, he wore a tuxedo, and they were clearly at a wedding. She never mentioned you. Never said anything about Santa Agnes, about having a friend with a matching scar, about any of it. My heart cracked. She forgot about me. Or she had her reasons for staying silent. His fingers traced the edge of the wedding photo. Valentina was murdered 3 years ago. Officially, it was a random mugging. Unofficially, I've spent every day since trying to find out who really killed her and why. The room spun. Murdered? She was investigating something when she died. Something dangerous. I never knew what. Never understood why she was so secretive in the months before. He looked up at me, and I saw grief etched into every line of his face. But now you walk into my bar with that scar, and suddenly I'm wondering if the answer was in her past all along. I don't know anything, I protested. I haven't seen her since I was 12 years old. I didn't even know she was alive, let alone that she'd married someone, that she'd died. Maybe not consciously. He stood, moving around the desk until he was standing directly in front of me. But you're the first real lead I've had in 3 years, Miss Collins. Which means you're not leaving my sight until I know everything there is to know about Santa Agnes, about Valentina, and about why she kept you secret. You can't just keep me here. I own this bar. I own the building it's in. I own half of this neighborhood. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but utterly inflexible. My name is Lucas Ravellini, and in this city, that name means something. So yes, Miss Collins, I absolutely can keep you here until I get the answers I need. The question is whether you're going to cooperate or make this difficult. I stood to face him, anger cutting through my fear and grief. Val was my friend. If someone killed her, I want to know who and why just as much as you do. So don't threaten me like I'm your enemy. For a long moment, we stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Then something shifted in his expression, a fractional softening around his eyes. You're right, he said finally. I apologize. This has been unexpected. For both of us. I touched the necklace at my throat again, drawing strength from it. What do you need from me? Everything you remember. Every detail about the orphanage, about Valentina, about what happened there. He returned to his chair, pulling out a legal pad and pen. And then we're going to figure out why my wife died and make sure whoever's responsible pays for it. I sat back down, my wet clothes leaving damp patches on the leather. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside this office, a different kind of storm was beginning. One that had been brewing for 15 years, waiting for two old friends' paths to cross again, even if one of them was already dead. The apartment Lucas Ravellini provided wasn't a prison cell, but it might as well have been. Located on the 14th floor of a building I'd never noticed despite working blocks away, it had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the East River, hardwood floors that gleamed under recessed lighting, and furniture that screamed money in quiet, understated tones. A king bed dominated the bedroom, its white linens so crisp they looked almost hostile. The kitchen was stocked with food I hadn't chosen, the bathroom filled with toiletries still in their packaging. What it didn't have was freedom. I'd been here for 3 days, and Marco the bodyguard stood outside my door like a statue made of muscle and silence. When I tried to leave that first morning, he'd simply stepped in front of me, his expression apologetic but immovable. "Mr. Ravellini's orders, Miss Collins. You stay here until he's verified your story." So I stayed. What choice did I have? Call the police and tell them what, exactly? That a powerful man was keeping me in a luxury apartment while investigating his wife's murder. They'd laugh me out of the station, assuming they even believed me. Lucas Ravellini clearly had reach in this city, connections that went deeper than I wanted to contemplate. My phone was my only link to the outside world, and I'd used it constantly those first 2 days. Called my supervisor at the clinic, fabricated a story about a family emergency in Boston. She'd been understanding, told me to take the time I needed. The relief in her voice suggested she thought I needed mental health days after losing the golden retriever, and I didn't correct her assumption. I also scrolled through every search result I could find about Valentina Ravellini. The articles from 3 years ago were sparse but consistent. Wife of prominent businessman Lucas Ravellini found dead in apparent mugging. Tragedy strikes Manhattan power couple. Police seek witnesses in fatal robbery. The photos showed her at charity events, always elegant in designer clothes, her dark hair styled perfectly, her smile warm but somehow distant. I studied each image obsessively, trying to reconcile this polished woman with the scared little girl who'd shared my narrow bed during thunderstorms, who'd stolen extra bread from the kitchen to make sure I ate. She'd lived an entire life I knew nothing about. Married a man who clearly adored her, if the grief carved into his features was any indication. Moved through a world of wealth and privilege, so far removed from Santa Agnes, it might as well have been another planet. And apparently, she'd never mentioned me once. That hurt worse than I wanted to admit. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, Lucas arrived with 2 other men I didn't recognize. They wore dark suits and carried leather briefcases, their expressions professionally neutral. Lawyers, I guessed, or investigators. They set up in the apartment's dining area, spreading documents across the glass table. Lucas gestured me over without greeting. "I need you to verify some information." I sat, my jaw tight. "Good afternoon to you too." His eyes flicked to mine briefly. "I apologize." "Good afternoon, Miss Collins. Now please verify this information." The first document was my adoption record, somehow obtained despite privacy laws. I scanned it, recognizing my younger self's signature at the bottom, the careful loops I'd practiced for weeks before signing. Thomas and Patricia Collins, approved adoptive parents. Date of adoption, March 15th, the year I turned 12. "That's accurate," I said. "Tell me about them." "The Collins family." I leaned back in the chair, crossing my arms. They seemed nice at first. Patricia baked cookies. Thomas coached Little League. They had a house in Brookline with a backyard and a dog named Chester. They wanted a daughter to complete their perfect family picture. What went wrong? The question landed like a punch. I'd spent years in therapy dissecting exactly what went wrong, understanding that it wasn't my fault, that I'd been a traumatized kid with behavioral issues stemming from institutionalization. Understanding didn't make it hurt less. "I had nightmares," I said quietly, screaming nightmares that woke the whole house. I hoarded food in my room because I was terrified there wouldn't be enough. I couldn't stand being touched without warning, which made Patricia cry because she wanted to be an affectionate mother. I got into fights at school when kids made fun of my secondhand clothes. Lucas's expression hadn't changed, but something in his posture had softened fractionally. After 2 years, they sat me down and explained very calmly that they'd made a mistake. that they weren't equipped to handle a child with my level of need, that it would be better for everyone if I returned to state care. I picked at a loose thread on my sleeve. They were probably right. I was miserable there, trying to be someone I wasn't. But it still felt like being thrown away twice. One of the investigators made a note. Lucas didn't move. Where did you go after? Back into the system. Foster homes, mostly. Some were okay, some were terrible. All were temporary. I learned to keep my head down, not get attached. On my 18th birthday, I aged out with exactly $300, a garbage bag of belongings, and a social worker who helped me apply for college scholarships. You chose veterinary medicine. Animals don't lie, I said simply. They don't pretend to want you when they don't. They're honest about their needs and their pain. It made sense to me. Lucas nodded slowly. And your recent move to Manhattan from Boston. My shoulders tensed. That's not relevant to Valentina. Everything about you is relevant until I determine otherwise. The arrogance in his tone sparked my anger back to life. I left because my ex-boyfriend was suffocating me. He wanted to know where I was every minute, who I talked to, what I spent money on. He never hit me, if that's what you're asking. But he didn't have to. The control was violence enough. Something dark crossed Lucas's face. His name? Why? You planning to break his kneecaps? I tried to make it sound sarcastic, but given what I'd learned about Lucas Ravellini in my internet deep dives, I wasn't entirely joking. Just curious. His tone suggested otherwise. We spent the next 2 hours going through every detail I could remember about Santa Agnes. The investigators took meticulous notes as I described the building's layout. A converted Victorian house that always smelled of boiled cabbage and industrial cleaner. The shared bedrooms with bunk beds lined up military-style, thin mattresses and thinner blankets. The dining hall where we ate in shifts. The oldest kids serving the younger ones under the watchful eye of staff who seemed perpetually exhausted. I described Mr. Pellegrini, the director, his tall frame always dressed in cheap suits that hung slightly wrong. His office that smelled of coffee and something chemical I could never identify. The way he'd call certain children in for interviews, and they'd leave looking pale and shaken, but no one ever explained why. Some kids just disappeared, I told them, touching the necklace at my throat without thinking. We'd go to bed with them in the next bunk, and by morning they'd be gone. The staff said they'd been adopted, that families had come for them. But it always happened so fast. No goodbyes, no warning. Did this happen to children you were close to? One of the investigators asked. A few. Sarah, who was 7 and had a lisp. Marcus, who was 14 and taught me how to pick locks on the supply closet. Both just vanished overnight. Val used to say they were lucky, that they'd gotten families. But she never sounded convinced. Lucas's pen had stopped moving. Did Valentina ever mention having siblings? Family members she'd been separated from? I shook my head. She said she didn't remember anything before the orphanage. She was placed there at 3 years old, she thought, but wasn't sure. The memories were too fuzzy. Did she ever seem like she was looking for someone? Trying to find out about her past? Not that I knew of. She was more focused on the future. She wanted to be a teacher, work with little kids. She was good at it too, always helping the younger children with their homework, reading to them before bed. My throat tightened. She would have been amazing at it. The room fell silent, except for the scratch of pens on paper. Through the windows, Manhattan's evening lights were beginning to bloom, the city transforming into something magical, despite all its grit and darkness. Finally, Lucas stood. Thank you for your cooperation, Miss Collins. The information you've provided has been helpful. So I can leave now? You can return to your apartment and your job, but you'll have protection. Protection or surveillance? Both. He gestured to one of the investigators. This is Joseph. He'll be your primary escort, along with a rotating team. They'll accompany you to work, to the grocery store, anywhere you go. I don't need a babysitter. You do if you want to stay alive. Lucas's voice had gone cold again. Valentina died investigating something connected to that orphanage. Now you show up with evidence linking you to her past, to a place she never mentioned existed. Whoever killed her might decide you're a loose end. The implications settled over me like ice water. I'd been so focused on the mystery, on the shock of finding Val again only to learn she was dead. that I hadn't considered I might be in actual danger. I didn't know anything, I protested. I haven't seen her in 15 years. How could I possibly be a threat? You know about Santa Agnes. You remember Pellegrini. You can identify the building, the staff, the other children. Lucas moved to stand directly in front of me. You're a witness to whatever was happening there, even if you don't realize it yet. My hands started shaking. I clasped them together in my lap, refusing to show more weakness than I already had. Then help me remember. Tell me what you know about Valentina's investigation. That's exactly what I intend to do. He pulled out his phone, typing something quickly. Tomorrow I'll show you what she was working on before she died. Tonight, Joseph will take you home to collect whatever you need, then bring you back here. This apartment is secure. Your building isn't. You want me to move in here? Temporarily. Until we know more about the threat level. I looked around the pristine space that felt nothing like home. Then I thought about my tiny studio in Hell's Kitchen. The sketchy neighborhood I'd chosen because it was what I could afford. The building with locks that barely worked, and neighbors I didn't know. Fine, I said finally. But I need to go to work tomorrow. I have patients depending on me. Animals in recovery that need consistent care. Lucas nodded. Joseph will coordinate with your schedule. But Miss Collins, I want to be clear about something. I met his gaze, steeling myself. Until we find out who killed Valentina and why, your life isn't entirely your own. You're connected to this investigation whether you like it or not. The only question is whether you fight me every step of the way, or whether we work together to get answers. I want answers, I said quietly. Val was the closest thing to family I had for 4 years. If someone murdered her, I want them to pay for it. Something shifted in his expression, the hardness cracking just slightly. She would have liked that you're still loyal to her. Even after all this time, did she really never mention me? The question escaped before I could stop it. Not once in 6 years? Lucas was quiet for a long moment. She had nightmares sometimes. She'd wake up calling a name I didn't recognize. Em or Emmy. I always assumed it was someone from her past, but she'd never tell me who. She'd just say it was nothing. Go back to sleep. My vision blurred with sudden tears. Emmy. That's what she'd called me. My full name too formal for a little girl's tongue. The nickname had died when I left the orphanage. No one else ever using it. She'd remembered. Through everything. Through building a new life and marrying a man who clearly loved her. Through becoming someone I wouldn't have recognized on the street. She'd remembered. Why wouldn't she tell you about me? I whispered. I don't know. Lucas's voice had gentled. But I intend to find out. Joseph stepped forward, his expression professional but not unkind. Miss Collins, whenever you're ready, we can go collect your things. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I gathered the few items I'd brought to this gilded cage, my mind spun with questions that had no answers. Valentina had kept me secret, locked away in whatever box she'd built around her past. But she'd also dreamed about me, called my name in her sleep. Whatever had happened to her, whatever she'd been investigating, it was connected to the 4 years we'd spent as sisters in everything but blood. And now I was stepping into the shadow she'd left behind, following a trail 3 years cold, with a grieving husband as my only guide. The only question was whether I'd find justice at the end of it, or just another way to lose someone I'd loved. Lucas picked me up from the clinic 4 days after our initial interrogation session. I'd just finished stitching up a tabby cat who'd gotten into a fight with something much larger. My hands still steady despite the exhaustion creeping through my bones. Joseph had been my shadow the entire shift, positioned near the waiting room with his back to the wall and eyes on every entrance. When Lucas walked through the clinic doors, several of my coworkers stopped what they were doing. He had that effect on people, commanding attention without saying a word. Today he wore dark jeans and a black sweater under a leather jacket. Less formal than the suits, but somehow more dangerous. We need to talk, he said without preamble. There's something I want to show you. I peeled off my latex gloves and tossed them in the biohazard bin. Can it wait until after my shift? No. Dr. Martinez, my supervisor, appeared from the back office. Emma, if you need to go, it's fine. We're covered for the rest of the day. The way she looked at Lucas, with a mixture of wariness and respect, Told me she'd figured out he wasn't just some boyfriend picking me up from work. Small mercies that she didn't ask questions. The car waiting outside was different from the sleek sedan that usually transported me. This was a black SUV with tinted windows dark enough to be illegal, Marco behind the wheel. Lucas opened the back door and waited while I climbed in, then slid in beside me. We drove in silence through Manhattan traffic, heading south toward the industrial areas near the waterfront. The neighborhoods grew rougher, luxury high-rises giving way to converted warehouses and aging brick buildings. Finally, Marco pulled into an alley beside a structure that looked abandoned, its windows covered with sheets of plywood, graffiti tagging every available surface. "Where are we?" I asked as Lucas helped me out of the SUV. "Somewhere private." He led me to a side entrance, punching a code into a keypad that looked far too new for the building's exterior. The door clicked open, revealing a stairwell that had been recently renovated, fluorescent lights humming overhead. We climbed 2 flights to a heavy steel door. Lucas unlocked it with a key from his pocket, then gestured me inside. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. The space was massive, probably spanning the entire floor of the warehouse, but it was the walls that made me stop breathing. Every available surface was covered with papers, photographs, maps, documents connected by colored string in patterns that would have looked insane to anyone who didn't understand investigation boards. In the center of it all was Valentina's face. Dozens of photos of her, maybe hundreds, at charity events, leaving restaurants, shopping, laughing with friends. Candid shots that suggested surveillance rather than social media. And crime scene photos too, though Lucas had positioned those further back, less prominent, but still present. My stomach turned seeing her like that, the life gone from eyes that had once sparkled with mischief as we stole extra cookies from the kitchen. "This is what I've been doing for 3 years," Lucas said quietly, standing beside me. "Every waking moment I'm not handling business obligations. I'm here, trying to understand what happened to her." I moved closer to the nearest wall section. It was organized by timeline, starting from 6 months before Valentina's death. There were bank statements, credit card receipts, phone records. Every detail of her life documented with obsessive precision. "You tracked everything she did," I whispered. "After she died, yes. When the police closed the case as a random mugging, I knew they were wrong. Valentina was careful, aware of her surroundings. She wouldn't have walked into a dangerous situation unprepared." His voice carried the weight of endless sleepless nights. "So I started digging. Found things she'd been researching in secret, places she'd visited without telling me, people she'd contacted." He pointed to a section focused on financial records. "This is what led me to the truth. Valentina had been tracking money movements through a charitable organization called Hope Foundation. Legitimate on the surface. Donations going to children's services, foster care support, adoption assistance. But the numbers didn't add up. I studied the documents, seeing highlighted sections, handwritten notes in margins. How so? Money coming in matched reported donations, but money going out to actual services was only about 30%. The rest disappeared into shell companies, offshore accounts. Lucas pulled out a folder from a filing cabinet and handed it to me. It took months to trace, but I finally found where most of it was going. To facilitate private adoptions, international placements, payments to officials in multiple countries to expedite paperwork. My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside were lists, spreadsheets with names, dates, ages, and amounts. Children. Dozens of them, maybe more. "Child trafficking," I said, my voice hollow. "On a massive scale. Operating for at least 15 years before Valentina started investigating." Lucas moved to another section of the wall. "And the organization running Hope Foundation? They also operated several orphanages and group homes, including this one." He tapped a document, and I saw the name that made my blood run cold. Santa Agnes Home for Children, Chicago, Illinois. Operated 1995-2008. "They closed it down a year after you left," Lucas said. "Claimed financial difficulties, sold the property, scattered the remaining children to other facilities. Very thorough in destroying records. There was a fire in the administrative office that wiped out most documentation. That's convenient. Too convenient, which is why Valentina became convinced the fire was deliberately set to cover evidence. He handed me another folder, this one thicker. These are the documents she managed to recover. Copies of adoption papers, payment records, staff schedules, and this. The photograph showed a group of adults standing in front of Santa Agnes. I recognized the building immediately. The Victorian architecture that had seemed grand to child me, but looked shabby in the photo. There were maybe 10 people in the picture, dressed formally like it was some kind of official event. And there, third from the left, was the man from my nightmares. Mr. Pellegrini looked younger in the photo, his hair darker, his frame not quite as heavy. But those eyes were the same. Cold, calculating, assessing everything like merchandise to be evaluated. That's him, I breathed. That's the director. Anthony Pellegrini, currently a successful businessman in New Jersey, runs several commercial real estate ventures. Sits on the board of 3 charities, including one that, surprise, facilitates international adoptions. Lucas's voice had gone hard. He's made millions in legitimate businesses. But I believe those businesses were built on money from selling children. I couldn't look away from the photograph. Val figured this out? She was getting close. I found emails she'd exchanged with a journalist discussing an exposé. Meeting notes with a lawyer about how to approach authorities with the evidence. She was preparing to blow the whole operation apart. He pulled out another document. This one a death certificate. 2 weeks before she was supposed to meet with the FBI, she was killed. The certificate listed cause of death as blunt force trauma, multiple stab wounds. Time of death, 11:47 p.m. Location, alley behind a restaurant in the meatpacking district. The police said witnesses reported seeing a man in dark clothing running from the scene. But no one got a good look at his face. Security cameras in the area had mysteriously malfunctioned that night. Very professional hit made to look like a robbery gone wrong. Lucas's jaw tightened. Someone knew what she was planning. Someone with resources enough to orchestrate her death and cover the tracks. I set down the folder, my legs suddenly unsteady. Lucas guided me to a chair positioned in front of a desk covered with more files. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "Because you're connected to it whether you want to be or not. You lived in that orphanage. You can identify Pellegrini, confirm he was there, testify to the conditions and the children who disappeared." Lucas crouched in front of me, his dark eyes intense. "You're a witness to his crimes, Emma. Even if you don't remember anything specific, your existence threatens him. But he doesn't know I exist. I haven't seen him in 15 years. Not yet, but I want to change that." I stared at him, comprehension dawning slowly. "You want to use me as bait. I want to use you as leverage. There's a charity gala in 3 days. One of those overpriced fundraisers where rich people feel good about themselves. Pellegrini always attends, makes a show of his philanthropic nature. I've already secured us invitations." Lucas stood, pulling out his phone and showing me the event details. "You'll come with me. Wear something that shows your arm. Let him see the scar. And then what? Then we watch how he reacts. If he recognizes the symbol from Santa Agnes. If he shows any sign of concern or recognition. We'll know he remembers. We'll know he's vulnerable." Lucas pocketed his phone. Valentina was working alone, trying to protect everyone around her by keeping them in the dark. I'm not making that mistake. We work together on this, or we don't work at all. I thought about Val, how she'd kept this investigation secret even from the man she married, how she'd carried this burden alone until it killed her. The anger that had been simmering since I learned of her death flared hotter. "I'll do it," I said, "but I want to be clear about something. I'm not doing this just for you or for justice in the abstract. I'm doing it for Val, for the little girl who gave me half her heart and made me promise never to forget her. And for every kid who disappeared from that place while we were too scared to ask questions." Something like respect flickered across Lucas's face. Fair enough. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Lucas had a dress delivered to the apartment, emerald green silk that draped elegantly and left my arms completely bare. When I tried it on, the scar stood out clearly against my skin, impossible to miss under proper lighting. The night of the gala, Marco drove us to a hotel ballroom in Midtown. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across tables draped in white linen, flower arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly rent positioned as centerpieces. Women wore designer gowns, men wore tuxedos, and everyone carried themselves with the casual confidence of people who'd never worried about money. Lucas looked devastating in a black tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, his hand warm at the small of my back as he guided me through the crowd. We drew attention, people's eyes following us with curiosity. I heard whispers, caught fragments of conversation. Is that Ravellini? I thought he stopped coming to these things after his wife died. Who's the woman? I've never seen her before. Gorgeous dress. Valentino, you think? I kept my head high, focusing on the role Lucas had coached me to play. Confident, elegant, comfortable in this world, even though I felt like an imposter. My fingers found the small necklace at my throat. Val's pendant hidden beneath the dress. A talisman for courage. It took 20 minutes before I spotted Pellegrini. He stood near the bar, talking to a group of men in expensive suits. He'd aged considerably since the photograph, his hair completely gray now, his frame carrying more weight. But the eyes were the same, and when I saw them, my childhood fear came rushing back so strongly I almost stumbled. Lucas steadied me immediately. That's him? Yes, I managed. Then let's get his attention. We circulated through the room, Lucas introducing me to various people whose names I immediately forgot. He positioned us strategically, moving gradually closer to where Pellegrini held court. Finally, we were close enough that I could hear the man's voice, smooth and cultured, discussing something about commercial development. Then Lucas maneuvered us directly into Pellegrini's line of sight. I raised my champagne glass to my lips, the movement deliberate, my left arm fully extended with the scar exposed. I saw the exact moment Pellegrini's gaze landed on it. His face went completely still. The champagne in his own glass sloshed slightly as his hand trembled. He said something to his companions, excusing himself mid-conversation, and started walking toward us. My heart hammered against my ribs. Lucas's hand found the small of my back again, grounding me. "Excuse me," Pellegrini said, his voice carrying that false warmth I remembered too well. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but have we met before? You look extraordinarily familiar." I turned to face him fully, letting him see my face clearly under the chandelier light. "I don't believe so. I'm Emma Collins." "Emma Collins," he repeated slowly, his eyes never leaving my scar. "That name doesn't ring a bell, but I could swear I know you from somewhere. Have you done any work in children's services? Charity organizations, perhaps?" "Not professionally, though I did spend time in the foster system as a child." I kept my voice light, casual. "Chicago area mostly. Place called Santa Agnes. Maybe you've heard of it?" The effect was instantaneous. What little color remained in his face drained completely. His champagne glass nearly slipped from his fingers before he recovered, that professional mask sliding back into place. "Santa Agnes?" "Yes, I believe that was a group home that closed some years back. Unfortunate situation." He forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Well, it was lovely meeting you, Miss Collins. If you'll excuse me, I just remembered I have an urgent call to make." He turned and walked away with controlled speed, not quite running, but close. Lucas watched him go with predatory interest. "That was more than recognition," he murmured in my ear. "That was fear." Within minutes, Pellegrini had left the gala entirely. Lucas made a subtle gesture, and I saw Joseph slip out after him, along with another man I recognized from Lucas's security team. "They'll follow him," Lucas said quietly. "See where he goes, who he contacts. Fear makes people sloppy." We stayed at the gala another hour, maintaining appearances. But my mind was racing, replaying Pellegrini's reaction over and over. The way his hands had shaken, the panic barely concealed behind his eyes. He remembered. He knew exactly what that scar meant, what it represented. And now he knew I was alive, asking questions, connected to Lucas Ravellini of all people. Later that night, back at the secure apartment, Joseph delivered his report. Pellegrini had driven directly to a warehouse facility in Newark. He'd stayed inside for approximately 45 minutes, during which time he made numerous phone calls. When he emerged, his body language suggested extreme agitation. We couldn't get close enough to hear the calls without risking exposure, Joseph said. But we photographed everyone who entered and exited the warehouse during that time. 3 men, all with known connections to trafficking operations in Eastern Europe. Lucas studied the photographs with grim satisfaction. He's calling in reinforcements, warning his associates that someone's asking questions about the old operation. Which means I'm in danger now, I said, stating the obvious. Which means we accelerated the timeline, Lucas corrected. Pellegrini just confirmed his guilt by panicking. Now we push harder, force him to make mistakes. And when he does, we'll be ready. I looked at the photographs spread across the table, at the warehouse where Pellegrini had run like a scared animal seeking his den. Somewhere in that building, or in buildings like it, were the records and evidence that could prove what happened to dozens of children, including what happened to Val, why she died. What's the next move? I asked. Lucas's expression was cold and calculating. We make him more afraid. And we see what crawls out of the woodwork when a man like Anthony Pellegrini starts to panic. I touched Val's necklace through my dress, drawing strength from the small piece of silver that connected me to her. She'd started this investigation alone, driven by the need to find her lost sister and protect other children from the same fate. Now I'd continue it. Not alone this time, but with Lucas and his resources, his determination, his own need for justice. The game had begun in earnest, and there was no turning back now. The night shift at Eastside Animal Emergency was usually quiet, just me and Dr. Patel handling the occasional emergency that couldn't wait until morning. Joseph stood his usual post near the reception desk, pretending to read a magazine while actually scanning every person who walked through the door. I'd gotten used to his presence over the past week, the way shadows had become part of my daily existence. I was finishing paperwork on a cat with kidney failure when the bell above the door chimed. A man entered carrying a medium-sized dog wrapped in a blanket, his face twisted with apparent concern. "Please, you have to help him," the man said, his accent thick. Eastern European, maybe. He was hit by car. He's bleeding. Dr. Patel was in surgery with another case. I moved around the counter immediately, my training overriding everything else. "Bring him to examination room 2. Let me see." Joseph shifted position, his hand moving inside his jacket, but the man seemed genuinely distraught. The dog whimpered convincingly as we entered the exam room. I gestured to the table. "Set him down gently." "What's his name?" "Bruno." The man laid the dog on the examination table, the blanket falling away to reveal a German Shepherd mix with what looked like road rash along his side. I pulled on latex gloves, approaching carefully. The dog's eyes were alert, watching me. And something about the situation felt wrong. Dogs in genuine distress didn't track movement that clearly, but my hands were already reaching for him, checking his gums, feeling for broken bones. That's when the door burst open behind me. 2 more men rushed in, and I saw the guns before my brain could process what was happening. The first man grabbed my arm, yanking me backward, his grip bruising. I opened my mouth to scream, and he clamped his other hand over it. "Quiet," he hissed. "Come with us, no trouble." The door to the exam room exploded inward. Joseph came through it like a force of nature, his own weapon drawn. He fired twice, the sound deafening in the small space. I felt, rather than saw, the first man drop, his grip on me releasing as he fell. More gunfire erupted from the lobby. Glass shattered. Someone was screaming. Maybe me. Maybe the receptionist who'd been at the front desk. I dropped to the floor, crawling behind the examination table, my hands slick with blood that wasn't mine. The dog, I realized distantly, had jumped off the table and disappeared. Not injured at all, just bait. They'd used a dog as bait to get to me. More men poured through the clinic's entrance. I heard Marco's voice shouting orders, then the distinctive sound of automatic weapons. The examination room window exploded, raining glass across my back. I curled into a ball, making myself as small as possible, pressed against the base of the cabinets where I kept surgical supplies. Someone stepped into the room. I saw boots, expensive leather, moving through the debris. My heart stopped. Then I heard Lucas's voice, cold and lethal. Emma. Where is she? Behind the table. Joseph called back, his voice strained. She's clear. Strong hands pulled me up. Lucas's face swam into focus, his expression harder than I'd ever seen it. Blood spattered his white shirt, though I couldn't tell if it was his. Are you hurt? His hands ran over my arms, my shoulders, checking for injuries with clinical efficiency. No, I don't think so. My voice sounded strange, distant. The dog wasn't really hurt. They used him to get me close. I know. He pulled me against his chest. One arm wrapped around me protectively while his other hand held his weapon. We're leaving. Now. The clinic was destroyed. Bullet holes pocked the walls. The waiting room chairs were overturned, and blood stained the linoleum in spreading pools. 2 bodies lay near the entrance. Neither of them Marco or Joseph, thank God. The receptionist huddled behind the desk, crying but apparently unharmed. Police are coming, Marco said, appearing at Lucas's shoulder. We need to be gone before they arrive. Lucas didn't argue. He half carried me through the side entrance where an SUV waited, engine running. Marco drove while Lucas kept me pinned against him in the back seat, his body a shield between me and the windows. We drove north, leaving the city's lights behind. My ears still rang from the gunfire, my hands shaking violently now that the adrenaline was fading. I couldn't stop seeing that moment when the man grabbed me, couldn't stop feeling his hand over my mouth. They knew where I worked, I said finally, my voice hollow. You said I'd be protected. You said I'd be safe. I was wrong. Lucas's jaw was tight, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. They moved faster than I anticipated. I'm sorry. Sorry? The word came out sharp, anger cutting through the fear. You used me as bait. You dangled me in front of Pellegrini like I was nothing, and now people are dead. That clinic, those animals, Dr. Patel was in surgery when this happened. He's fine. Marco confirmed it before we left. That's not the point. I shoved away from him, pressing myself against the opposite door. The point is, you knew this would happen. You knew showing me to Pellegrini would put a target on my back, and you did it anyway. Yes. He didn't try to deny it, didn't offer excuses. I gambled with your safety because I needed to confirm he recognized you, that he saw you as a threat. I was right, but I underestimated how quickly he'd move to eliminate that threat. So what now? How many more times do I almost die before you get your revenge? This isn't about revenge. For the first time since I'd met him, Lucas's control cracked. This is about justice for a woman who died trying to protect children from monsters. This is about making sure the people who killed her can't hurt anyone else. And yes, I used you. I won't apologize for that, but I won't let them take you the way they took her. The vehemence in his voice startled me into silence. We drove for another hour, the city giving way to suburbs, then to rural darkness punctuated by occasional farmhouses. Finally, Marco turned down a private road marked only by a small stone pillar. The house appeared gradually through the trees, a sprawling structure of wood and stone that looked more like a lodge than a residence. Security lights illuminated the driveway, and I saw at least 3 other men positioned around the property perimeter. Lucas helped me out of the SUV, his hand gentle now where it had been commanding before. You'll be safe here. I own the property through several shell companies. No one outside my inner circle knows it exists. Inside, the house was warm and surprisingly comfortable. Wood beam ceilings soared overhead. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and leather furniture was arranged to take advantage of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a dark lake. Under different circumstances, it would have been beautiful. There are bedrooms upstairs, Lucas said. Choose whichever you like. You'll find clothes in the closets, all sizes. Bathroom is stocked. Kitchen is fully supplied. Another gilded cage. I moved to the windows, staring out at my reflection. Behind me, Lucas stood with his hands in his pockets, blood still staining his shirt. I failed her. The words came out quietly, almost too soft to hear. Valentina. She was investigating something dangerous, and I was too focused on business to notice. Too confident that my reputation would protect her. When she died, when I found her in that alley, I swore I'd never fail like that again. I turned to face him. His mask had completely dropped, leaving only raw pain visible in his features. Every day for 3 years, I've lived with the knowledge that I could have saved her if I'd just paid attention. If I'd asked the right questions, noticed her withdrawing, pushed past her deflections. She died alone, Emma. Died protecting me from whatever she'd discovered. And I let it happen. My anger drained away, replaced by something more complicated. You couldn't have known. I should have. He moved to the fireplace, bracing his hands against the mantel. I knew Pellegrini would see you as a threat. I knew he'd act. I thought I had more time. Thought I could control the situation better. I gambled with your life because I'm obsessed with not failing again. And I almost got you killed anyway. I crossed the room slowly, standing a few feet away from him. You saved my life tonight. Your people were there. If Joseph hadn't come through that door when he did, if I hadn't put you in that position at all, you wouldn't have needed saving. Val was investigating Pellegrini before she ever met you, I said. This started long before you were in the picture. You didn't fail her, Lucas. The system failed her. The people who should have protected those children failed them. Pellegrini and everyone who enabled him failed. You're just the one who loved her enough to keep fighting after she was gone. He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the depth of his grief laid bare. I don't know how to do this any other way. Don't know how to stop. Then don't stop, but stop blaming yourself for things you couldn't control. We stood there in the silence of the lodge, two people bound together by a dead woman's memory and a shared need for justice. Outside, the lake reflected starlight, peaceful and oblivious to the violence we'd left behind in the city. Over the following days, a strange domesticity developed. Lucas worked from the lodge, taking calls in the study, coordinating his various business interests remotely. I discovered horses in the stable behind the house, 3 of them, clearly well cared for. No one stopped me when I started visiting them, spending hours brushing their coats, cleaning their stalls, finding solace in the simple, honest work. Lucas watched me sometimes. I'd look up from grooming one of the horses and see him standing at the window of his study, his expression unreadable. When I came back inside, he'd be on a phone call or reviewing documents. But the coffee waiting for me was always exactly how I liked it. Conversations happened in fragments. Over breakfast, I told him about veterinary school, how I'd worked 3 jobs to afford it even with scholarships. How the first time I successfully performed surgery on a dog hit by a car, I'd cried for an hour afterward, overwhelmed by the responsibility of holding life in my hands. He told me about meeting Valentina at a business dinner, how she'd been seated beside him by her father, an associate looking to strengthen ties. How she'd spent the entire meal asking him questions about legitimate aspects of his businesses, pointedly ignoring the unspoken understanding of what else he controlled. She wasn't impressed by power, Lucas said, his fingers tracing patterns on his coffee cup. She wanted to know what I actually did with it, whether I used it to help people or just to acquire more power. I'd never been asked that before. Most people either fear me or want something from me. She just wanted to understand me. When did you know you loved her? 3 months later. She'd started working as a teacher's aide at an elementary school in the Bronx. Rough neighborhood, kids with difficult lives. She invited me to come see the classroom she'd set up with her own money, bought books and supplies because the school couldn't afford them. I watched her with those kids. How gentle she was, how patient, and I knew I'd never let her go. But it was arranged initially. Her father suggested we meet. We both knew what that meant. But what we built was real, Emma. Every day of those 6 years was real. The investigation continued around us. Lucas received constant updates from his people. Pellegrini had gone to ground after the failed attack on the clinic, his usual haunts abandoned, his phones disconnected. But he couldn't disappear completely, not someone with his business interests and public profile. On the 4th night, Lucas called me into his study. Documents covered every surface, his laptop showing what looked like banking records. My people found something. Valentina's lawyer, the one she consulted about bringing evidence to the FBI, kept copies of everything she gave him, including this. He turned the laptop toward me. I saw scanned documents, official-looking forms with government seals, birth certificates, adoption papers, medical records, all from Santa Agnes Home for Children. This is a safe deposit box, Lucas explained. Valentina rented it under a false name 2 months before she died. The lawyer had a key, held in escrow to be delivered to law enforcement if anything happened to her. But he never came forward after her death. Why not? He died. Car accident, 6 weeks after Valentina. Officially ruled an accident, but the timing is suspicious. Lucas pulled up another file. His firm kept the box rental information in their files. It took my people this long to find it and get access to the bank records. What's in the box? I don't know yet, but according to the rental agreement, Valentina designated one person besides herself who could access it. He pulled up a document, and I saw my name. Emma Collins, pre-authorized accessor, biometric data on file as of March 2020. That's a year before she died, I whispered. She registered me a year before, which means she knew she might die. Was planning for that possibility, and she wanted you to be able to access whatever she'd hidden. Lucas closed the laptop. The bank is in Connecticut, about 2 hours from here. We can go tomorrow if you're ready. I thought about Val, my scared little friend who'd grown into a woman brave enough to investigate a human trafficking ring, who'd kept me secret to protect me, but had also made sure I could access her evidence if the worst happened. She'd never forgotten me. Not really. She'd just loved me enough to keep me far away from the danger she was walking into. I'm ready, I said. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at the window of the bedroom I'd claimed, watching the lake shimmer under moonlight. Tomorrow, I'd learn what Val had been hiding, what she'd deemed important enough to die protecting. And somehow, I'd have to find the strength to continue what she'd started. The drive to Connecticut took longer than expected. Morning traffic clogged the highways leading out of the city, giving me too much time to think about what we might find in Valentina's safe deposit box. Lucas sat beside me in the back seat, working on his laptop, but I caught him glancing at me more than once. The tension between us had shifted over the past week at the lodge. It wasn't just the shared purpose anymore, the mutual need for justice. Something else hummed beneath the surface, charged and dangerous in its own way. I'd catch myself watching him when he thought I wasn't looking, noticing details I had no business noticing. The way his jaw tightened when he was frustrated, how his voice softened when he spoke about Valentina, the careful way he moved around me, always aware of where I was, making sure I felt safe. It was becoming harder to remember that this man was dangerous, that his world was built on violence and control, even if he wielded those tools for what he believed were righteous reasons. You're quiet, Lucas said, closing his laptop. Nervous, I admitted. Whatever Val put in that box, she died to protect it. Then we'll make sure her sacrifice meant something. The bank was in a wealthy suburb, the kind of place where money whispered rather than shouted. Classical architecture, marble floors, and staff who moved with practiced discretion. Lucas gave them my name, and within minutes we were escorted to a private room lined with safe deposit boxes. The manager, an older woman with kind eyes, verified my identification against their records. You were registered as an authorized accessor in March of 2020, she confirmed. Box 447. Your biometric scan matches our files perfectly. My hand shook slightly as I placed my palm on the scanner. The system beeped, a green light flashed, and the manager retrieved a long metal box from the wall. She set it on the table between Lucas and me. I'll give you privacy, she said, excusing herself. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The box sat there, innocuous and terrifying. The last message from a woman who'd been murdered for what she knew. Do you want me to open it? Lucas asked quietly. No. I reached for the latch. This is from Val to me. I need to do it. Inside, nestled in protective cloth, was a laptop, several thumb drives, a stack of folders bound with rubber bands, and a silver necklace with a pendant identical to mine. I lifted it carefully, the chain sliding through my fingers. She kept hers, I whispered. All these years, she kept it. Lucas's expression softened in a way I'd never seen before. She never forgot you, Emma. That much is clear. I fastened the necklace around my neck beside my own, feeling the weight of both pendants resting against my collarbone. Two halves of a heart, reunited after 15 years. The laptop powered on, and after a moment it prompted for a password. I stared at the blank field, my mind racing. What would Val have used? Something only someone from our past would know. Then it hit me. Our birthday. Not our real birthdays, which we'd celebrated on random days assigned by social services, but the birthday we'd chosen for ourselves, the day we'd made our blood oath and became sisters in everything but name. March 15th. I typed the date, holding my breath. The screen unlocked. "How did you know?" Lucas asked. It was our shared birthday. The day we became family. I navigated to the documents folder, finding files organized by year and category. She left everything. For the next hour, we poured through the evidence. Lists of children, some with photos attached. Sarah, age 7, lisp, sold to a family in Germany for $40,000. Marcus, age 14, good with mechanics, sent to a factory in Thailand. Dozens of names, dozens of children I'd known or heard about, all reduced to transactions with price tags. The financial records showed the full scope of the operation. Hope Foundation had facilitated over 200 illegal adoptions between 1995 and 2005, generating millions in revenue. The money had been laundered through various businesses, including several owned by organized crime families. "Look at this list of clients," Lucas said grimly, pointing to a spreadsheet. 3 judges, a state senator, 2 FBI agents, and at least 5 major crime figures, including members of the Albanian organization that's been trying to move into my territory for years. They all used Pellegrini's services, either for themselves or as a way to launder money. Child trafficking is lucrative, and it's harder to trace than drugs or weapons. His face had gone hard. This is why Valentina died. Too many powerful people with too much to lose. I clicked on a folder labeled Personal, Sophia. Inside were video files, dated from the last few months of Valentina's life. I opened the first one. Val's face filled the screen. Older than in my memories, but unmistakably her. Same dark eyes, same determined expression. "My name is Valentina Ravellini," she said to the camera. "If you're watching this, I'm probably dead. Emma, if it's you, I'm sorry. Sorry I never reached out. Sorry I kept you in the dark. But I needed you safe. And the only way to do that was to keep you far away from this investigation." Tears blurred my vision. Lucas's hand found mine under the table, his grip warm and steady. "I discovered something 6 months ago," Val continued on screen. Records showing that I had a younger sister. Her name was Sophia. She was 3 years old when child services separated us. I don't remember her at all, but the documents don't lie. She was placed in Santa Agnes with me for 2 weeks. Then she disappeared from the system completely. She paused, wiping her own eyes. I traced her through Pellegrini's records. She was sold like merchandise to a family named Dubois in Lyon, France. She was 5 years old. They paid $50,000 for her. My God, I breathed. I've been trying to find her, to see if she's okay, if she knows what happened to her. But every step I take toward the truth makes this network more nervous. Lucas doesn't know about any of this. I can't tell him because his world is too connected to these people. If he tried to help, it would start a war. On screen, Val leaned closer to the camera. "Emma, if you're watching this, I need you to do something for me. Find Sophia. Use these records. Use Lucas's resources if he's helping you. And find my sister. Tell her I never stopped looking. Tell her I loved her even though I didn't remember her." The video ended. I sat frozen, overwhelmed by the weight of Val's final request. "We'll find her," Lucas said quietly. "Sophia Dubois, Lyon, France. We'll find her. She's your sister-in-law," I realized. Family you never knew Valentina had, which makes her worth finding regardless of any dying wishes. He closed the laptop carefully. "But first, we need to copy all of this and get it somewhere secure. This evidence is worth killing for." We spent another hour photographing documents, copying files to encrypted drives Lucas had brought. The necklace and the laptop itself we took with us, along with the most crucial original documents. On the drive back, neither of us spoke much. I couldn't stop thinking about Sophia. about a little girl sold to strangers in a foreign country. Was she happy? Did she know she'd been trafficked? Did she have any idea her older sister had died trying to find her? When we arrived back at the lodge, it was late afternoon. The setting sun painted the lake in shades of gold and crimson. Lucas dismissed Marco and the other security, telling them to maintain perimeter checks, but give us space. Inside, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at the windows, watching the light fade. Lucas joined me, his own glass in hand. "She was trying to save everyone," I said. "All those kids, including her sister. And she died before she could finish. Then we finish it for her." I turned to face him. "This is bigger than I understood. Politicians, judges, FBI agents. How do we fight that? Carefully, with evidence that can't be disputed and allies who can't be bought." He set down his glass. "I have contacts in federal law enforcement, people Valentina never knew about, people who owe me favors and who have their own reasons to want Pellegrini's network destroyed. Why would they help you? You're not exactly law-abiding yourself." "No, but I have rules. Children are off-limits. Human trafficking is off-limits. There are lines even in my world that you don't cross." His voice carried steel beneath the calm. "Pellegrini crossed every line that matters. That makes him an enemy I'm willing to burn bridges to destroy." We stood there in the fading light, and I became acutely aware of how close he was. Close enough that I could see the fatigue around his eyes, the weight he carried trying to avenge a woman he'd loved. Close enough to smell his cologne, woodsy and warm. "Lucas," I started, not sure what I wanted to say. He lifted his hand slowly, giving me time to move away, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. His touch was gentle, at odds with everything I knew about him. "I know this isn't the right time," he said quietly. "I know you're grieving your friend, that you're scared and angry and confused. But Emma, you need to know that somewhere in all of this, you became more than just a connection to Valentina, more than just a witness or a source of information." My breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I've started looking forward to seeing you in the mornings, to hearing your thoughts about the investigation, about everything. I'm saying that when those men attacked the clinic, the terror I felt wasn't about losing a witness. It was about losing you specifically. This is a terrible idea," I whispered, even as I swayed closer to him. "Your world, my world, they don't fit together." "I know." His other hand came up to frame my face. "Tell me to stop." I should have. Every rational part of my brain screamed that getting involved with Lucas Ravellini was the worst decision I could possibly make. He was dangerous, damaged, obsessed with avenging a dead wife. I was vulnerable, isolated, bound to him by circumstances beyond my control. But I didn't tell him to stop. Instead, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. His response was immediate, but controlled. His mouth moving against mine with a hunger tempered by care, one arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me against him, while his other hand tangled in my hair. I gripped his shirt, anchoring myself as the kiss deepened, becoming something desperate and needy. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back. "I can't," I gasped, stepping away. "I can't do this. Not now, not with everything so complicated. Emma, you're grieving Valentina. I'm grieving her too, and I'm scared, and I don't trust my own judgment right now." My hands shook as I pushed them through my hair. "If we do this, if we cross that line, there's no going back. And I need to know I'm making that choice clearly, not because I'm traumatized or lonely or caught up in the intensity of the situation." Lucas's jaw worked, but he nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry. That was selfish of me. It wasn't just you," I admitted. "I wanted it too. But wanting something doesn't make it right." I retreated to my bedroom, closing the door and leaning against it. My lips still tingled from the kiss. My body still hummed with awareness. But my mind knew the truth. Getting involved with Lucas meant accepting his world. All of it. The violence, the danger, the moral compromises. It meant choosing a path that had no clear destination. And I wasn't ready to make that choice. Not yet. Not until I understood what I was really choosing. The days after retrieving the evidence from Connecticut blurred together. I barely slept, spending every waking hour reviewing Valentina's files, searching for any scrap of information about Sophia. Lucas gave me space, working from the study while I commandeered the dining table, spreading documents across every available surface. The adoption records were buried deep in the files, hidden within a folder labeled Personal Research. I found them on the third day, my eyes burning from hours of reading. The paperwork showed a transaction dated August 1998. Sophia Marino, age 5, transferred to the custody of Jean-Claude and Marie Dubois of Lyon, France. $50,000, paid in 3 installments to Hope Foundation, with Anthony Pellegrini's signature on every document. Val had highlighted sections, made notes in the margins. Dubois family legitimate? Check background. Sophia would be 32 now. Lion address, still current. My sister had been so close to finding her. If she'd lived just a few more months, she might have succeeded. Lucas found me crying over the documents that evening. He didn't say anything. Just sat beside me and waited until I could speak. "We need to find her," I said, my voice raw. "Sophia, we need to finish what Val started. That could be dangerous. Expanding the investigation internationally brings complications. I don't care." I turned to face him, gripping his arm. "Val died trying to find her sister. The least we can do is complete her mission. Don't you want to meet your sister-in-law? Don't you want to know if she's okay?" Something shifted in his expression. "You're right. I'll make some calls." Within hours, Lucas had mobilized contacts across Europe. His reach extended further than I'd imagined, connecting with people in France who could track down a 32-year-old woman with minimal information. It should have disturbed me how easily he commanded such resources. Instead, I felt grateful. While his investigators worked, the tension between us grew unbearable. We moved around each other carefully, maintaining physical distance while the air crackled with unspoken words. I'd catch him watching me from across a room, his expression unguarded for just a moment before he looked away. At night, I lay awake knowing he was 1 floor below, probably also unable to sleep. I was falling for him. The realization hit me during breakfast on the 5th day, watching him read through reports while absently pushing eggs around his plate. He'd barely eaten since we found the evidence, consumed by the same obsession that had driven Val. But unlike Val, he wasn't alone. He had me, whether he fully acknowledged it or not. The problem was admitting I was falling meant accepting everything that came with Lucas Ravellini. His world, his choices, his past and future. I'd spent years building walls around myself, protecting against the pain of abandonment and rejection. Letting him in meant demolishing those walls completely. A week after we'd started the search, Lucas's investigator called with results. We sat together in his study while he put the call on speaker. "Found her," the woman's accented voice announced. "Sophia Dubois, 32 years old, currently residing in Paris. She's an elementary school teacher at Saint-Michel Primary School in the 15th district. Never married, lives alone in a small apartment near the school. Background on the adoptive family?" Lucas asked. "Jean-Claude Dubois died in 2015 heart attack. Marie Dubois still alive, living in a care facility in Lyon with advanced Alzheimer's. They were legitimate professionals, no criminal record. By all accounts, they treated Sophia well. She visits her mother monthly." Relief washed through me. At least Val's sister had ended up in a loving home, despite the horrific circumstances of her adoption. "Does she know?" I asked. "About how she was adopted?" "Unknown. Her birth records list the Dubois as her biological parents. If she suspects anything, she's never pursued it officially." After the call ended, I turned to Lucas. "I need to go to Paris. I need to tell her in person. Emma, this isn't negotiable. Val left me that message specifically asking me to find Sophia and tell her the truth. I'm not doing that over a phone call or through an intermediary." I stood, pacing the study. "She deserves to know she had a sister who loved her, who died trying to find her." Lucas studied me for a long moment. "Then I'm coming with you. For security." "Fine." 2 days later, we landed in Paris. The city spread beneath us as we descended. Beautiful and ancient and completely overwhelming. I'd never been to Europe, never traveled much beyond the East Coast. Now I was about to shatter a woman's entire understanding of her own history. Lucas had arranged everything with his typical efficiency. A car waited at the airport, a hotel suite overlooking the Seine, contacts who confirmed Sophia's schedule and habits. She spent Saturday mornings at a cafe near her apartment, grading papers and reading. That's where I found her. The cafe was tucked into a quiet street in the 15th district, small tables spilling onto the sidewalk despite the November chill. I spotted Sophia immediately. She sat near the window, dark hair pulled into a casual bun, wearing a cream-colored sweater and jeans. Her face was partially obscured by the laptop in front of her, but when she looked up to take a sip of coffee, I saw Val in her features. The same warm brown eyes, the same shape to her mouth. My sister's sister. Lucas waited across the street, giving me space but close enough to intervene if needed. I approached her table slowly, my heart hammering. "Excuse me," I started carefully. "Are you Sophia Dubois?" She looked up, surprised. "Yes? Do I know you?" "No, but I need to talk to you about something important. May I sit?" Wariness crossed her face, but she gestured to the empty chair. "All right." I sat, placing the folder I'd brought on the table between us. Inside were photos of Valentina, documents from Santa Agnes, copies of the adoption papers, evidence carefully selected to tell a story without completely destroying her. "My name is Emma Collins. I know this is going to sound strange, but I knew your sister. Your biological sister, Valentina." Sophia's face went completely still. "I don't have a sister. I'm an only child. That's what you were told, but it's not true." I opened the folder, pulling out a photo of Valentina at age 4 or 5, standing in front of the orphanage. "This is Valentina Marino. She was your sister. You were both placed in Santa Agnes Home for Children in Chicago when you were very young. She was older, about 6. You were only 3. This is ridiculous." But Sophia's hands were shaking as she reached for the photo. "Who sent you? What kind of sick joke is this?" "It's not a joke. I wish it were." I pulled out the adoption papers next, the ones showing her sale to the Dubois family. "You were separated when you were 5. Your adoptive parents paid $50,000 through an organization that was trafficking children internationally. They may not have known it was illegal. They may have believed they were going through legitimate channels. But the truth is, you were stolen from your sister and sold." Sophia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You're insane. I need you to leave. Please, just look at this." I pulled out my laptop, the one containing Valentina's videos. "Your sister spent the last months of her life trying to find you. She was murdered 3 years ago because of it. The least you can do is watch what she wanted to say to you." Something in my voice must have convinced her. She sat back down slowly, her eyes never leaving my face. "Murdered? Yes, by the people running the trafficking operation. She got too close to the truth." I turned the laptop toward her and pressed play on the video file labeled, "For Sophia." Val's face filled the screen. Sophia gasped, one hand flying to her mouth. "My name is Valentina Marino," Val said from the recording. "If you're watching this, then you're my sister Sophia, and someone finally found you. I'm so sorry it took so long. I'm so sorry I couldn't find you myself." Tears streamed down Sophia's face as Val continued, describing fragmented memories of a baby sister, a toddler who laughed constantly, a little girl taken away in the middle of the night while Valentina screamed and fought the adults holding her back. "I never forgot you," Val said. "Even when I couldn't remember your face, I knew something was missing. Someone was missing. And when I found the records, when I learned what happened to us both, I promised myself I'd bring you home." The video ended. Sophia sat frozen, tears dripping onto the table. She was married. I continued quietly. "To a man named Lucas Ravellini. She was happy, as far as I know. She became the kind of person who fought for children who couldn't fight for themselves. And she never stopped looking for you. Why didn't she find me?" Sophia's voice broke. "If she was looking, why didn't she find me before she died? Because she ran out of time. Because the people she was investigating killed her before she could finish." I pulled out the letter, the handwritten pages Val had sealed in an envelope marked, "For my sister. She wrote this for you, in case she died before she could meet you." Sophia took the letter with trembling hands. She read silently, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I looked away, giving her privacy with her sister's final words. When she finally finished, she set the letter down carefully, as if it might disintegrate. Did she suffer? When she died? I don't know the details, but it was quick from what I understand. And you? How did you know her? We were friends. As children, in the same orphanage. We lost touch when I was adopted, but we made a promise to never forget each other. I touched the necklace at my throat, both pendants visible. She kept hers. Even after all those years, she kept it. Sophia reached out, her fingers brushing the silver. She really loved me. I can feel it in her words. She did, more than anything. We sat in silence for a long time, the cafe bustling around us while Sophia processed information that had just rearranged her entire life. Finally, she looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for finishing what she started, for making sure I knew the truth. She would have wanted you to know, would have wanted you to understand that you were loved, even when you were apart." Sophia gathered the photos, the documents, holding them against her chest like precious treasures. "Will you tell me about her? About what she was like?" So I did. I told her about Val the child, brave and fierce and protective. And Lucas, who'd been watching from across the street, eventually joined us, telling her about Val the woman, brilliant and determined and full of hope. We talked until the cafe closed, sharing stories of a woman who'd connected us all. And when Sophia finally stood to leave, she hugged me tightly. "I have a sister," she said. "I had a sister who loved me. That changes everything." As I watched her walk away, both our contact information saved in her phone, I felt the weight of Val's final request lift from my shoulders. I'd done it. I'd honored her memory, finished her mission, brought her sister the truth she deserved. It wouldn't bring Val back. Nothing would. But it was something. And for now, that had to be good enough. We returned from Paris to find Lucas's operation already in full swing. The lodge had been transformed into a command center, monitors displaying surveillance feeds, maps spread across every surface, men speaking in low voices into headsets. I stood at the edge of it all, feeling like an outsider watching a machine I didn't fully understand. Lucas found me on the back deck, staring at the lake. "We have what we need," he said without preamble. "Valentina's evidence, combined with the contacts I've made, it's finally enough to move." "Move how?" I reached out to an FBI agent, Sarah Mitchell. She's part of a task force investigating child trafficking. Valentina tried to contact her 3 years ago but was killed before they could meet. His jaw tightened. Mitchell confirmed the FBI has been building a case against Pellegrini for years, but never had concrete evidence. Now we do. Over the next 48 hours, I watched Lucas orchestrate something that looked more like a military operation than law enforcement. He coordinated with Agent Mitchell, sharing Valentina's files while keeping his own involvement carefully legal. The FBI couldn't officially work with someone like Lucas, but they could act on anonymous tips and evidence that mysteriously appeared in their possession. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Lucas's financial people created false transactions, suggesting a large sum of money from the old Santa Agnes operation was being moved through accounts in New Jersey. They made sure the information leaked to sources that would reach Pellegrini, making it look like someone was stealing from funds he thought were safely hidden. "He'll have to verify personally," Lucas explained, pointing to a warehouse location on the map. "The amounts we're showing are too large to trust to intermediaries. His paranoia will force him out of hiding. And then what? Then the FBI arrests him with evidence of financial crimes linking him to the trafficking operation. Once they have him in custody, they can build the full case using everything Valentina collected." It sounded reasonable, professional, safe even. Until Lucas turned to me with an expression I'd learned to dread. "You're staying here during the operation," he said. "Non-negotiable. Lucas, Emma, this isn't the charity gala. This is an active law enforcement operation with armed criminals. I won't put you in that position." Every instinct screamed to argue, but I saw the fear beneath his command. He'd already lost Valentina to this investigation. The thought of losing me too was written plainly across his face. "All right," I said quietly. "I'll stay here." Relief flooded his features. He pulled me close. pressing a kiss to my forehead. Thank you. Marco will be here with you. The operation should be over in a few hours. The night of the operation, I paced the lodge like a caged animal. Marco sat near the door, monitoring communications through an earpiece, his expression giving nothing away. I tried reading, tried watching television, tried anything to distract myself from imagining Lucas in danger. Then Marco's posture changed. He pressed his hand to his earpiece, his face going pale. What? I demanded. What's happening? Complications. Pellegrini brought more security than anticipated, including members of the Albanian organization. My blood went cold. Is Lucas okay? They're engaging now. FBI is moving in, but... He stopped, listening to something I couldn't hear. Multiple shots fired. Officer down. No, wait, I didn't hear the rest. I was already moving, grabbing car keys from the hook by the door, running for the SUV parked in the driveway. Miss Collins, stop! Marco called after me, but I was already behind the wheel, the engine roaring to life. My hands shook on the steering wheel as I raced toward Jersey City. The memory of the clinic invasion flooded back. The sound of gunfire, the smell of blood, the terror of being grabbed. But stronger than the fear was the certainty that I couldn't lose Lucas. Not now. Not when I'd finally admitted to myself that I loved him. The warehouse district was chaos when I arrived. Police cars blocked the streets, their lights painting everything in red and blue. Ambulances stood with doors open. I abandoned the SUV and ran toward the commotion, my medical training automatically cataloging the scene. Multiple injured FBI agents providing cover, local police establishing a perimeter. And there, being treated by paramedics near one of the ambulances, was Lucas. Blood stained his shirt, his left arm hanging at an awkward angle. But he was alive. He was arguing with the paramedic trying to examine him, his attention fixed on the warehouse where FBI agents were leading out suspects in handcuffs. Lucas! I shouted, pushing past an officer trying to stop me. His head snapped toward me, and I saw his expression transform. Anger at my disobedience, yes, but overwhelmed by pure relief. I crashed into him, wrapping my arms around his waist, careful to avoid his injured shoulder. You're an idiot, he growled into my hair. I told you to stay at the lodge. I know. I'm sorry. I saw the news report about shots fired and I just couldn't sit there not knowing if you were alive. Tears streamed down my face. I can't lose you, Lucas. I can't. His good arm tightened around me. I'm okay. It's just a flesh wound. The operation was successful. I pulled back enough to see his face. What happened? Pellegrini showed up with 8 men, including 3 from the Albanian organization. They were protecting their investment. We knew there'd be resistance, but not that level. He gestured toward the warehouse. Firefight lasted about 10 minutes. FBI moved in as planned. We got Pellegrini and 7 of his people. 1 Albanian got away, but we'll find him. Agent Mitchell approached, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an FBI windbreaker. Mr. Ravellini, I need to be very clear about something. Officially, you weren't here tonight. Officially, an anonymous tip led us to this location where we discovered Anthony Pellegrini engaged in illegal activity. Understood, Agent Mitchell. Lucas's voice carried respect. I'm just a concerned citizen who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. She nodded, then looked at me. You must be Emma Collins. The evidence your friend Valentina collected is going to put away a lot of very bad people. She died a hero. Thank you, I managed. As Mitchell walked away to coordinate with other agents, I turned back to Lucas. The paramedic had finished bandaging his shoulder, declaring he needed proper treatment at a hospital, but would survive. Let's get you checked out properly, I said, slipping my hand into his uninjured one. In a minute. He cupped my face with his good hand, his thumb brushing away my tears. You drove here. Even after what happened at the clinic, even knowing there was active gunfire, you drove here. I had to. I realized something tonight. Sitting in that lodge, waiting for news, I realized that I can't live in fear anymore. Not fear of being hurt, not fear of losing people, not fear of loving someone who lives in a dangerous world. I met his dark eyes steadily. I love you, Lucas. I don't know when it happened or how, but I do, and I can't pretend otherwise anymore. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then he kissed me, there in the middle of the chaos, with FBI agents and police officers and paramedics all around us. It was a kiss that tasted of blood and smoke and desperation, but also of hope and future and promises neither of us had dared to make. When we broke apart, both of us breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. I love you too. I think I have for weeks, but I was too afraid to admit it. Too afraid I was betraying Valentina's memory. She'd want you to be happy, I said softly. She'd want both of us to be happy. Yeah, his smile was bittersweet. She would. We stood there holding each other while around us, the machinery of justice processed Anthony Pellegrini and his associates. Valentina's evidence, combined with what the FBI found tonight, would ensure convictions. The trafficking network she'd died exposing would finally be dismantled. It wouldn't bring her back. Nothing would. But it honored her sacrifice. And maybe, just maybe, it would prevent other children from suffering the way we had suffered. As dawn broke over Jersey City, Lucas and I left the scene together, ready to face whatever came next. Not as investigator and witness, not as protector and protected, but as two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of tragedy and chosen to build something new from the ruins. 4 months had passed since the night Anthony Pellegrini was arrested in that Jersey City warehouse. 4 months of trials, testimonies, and headlines that dominated the news cycle. The trafficking network Val had died exposing was finally being dismantled piece by piece. 47 arrests across 3 countries, with more indictments coming daily. I stood in the doorway of my new veterinary clinic, watching the morning sun paint Manhattan's streets gold. The sign above read, "Second Chances Animal Care," in simple lettering, and through the windows, I could see the examination rooms I'd spent weeks designing, the surgical suite equipped with everything I'd ever dreamed of having, the recovery area where animals could heal in comfort and safety. Lucas had insisted on financing it, but the clinic was registered solely in my name. My business, my rules, my independence maintained even as our lives became increasingly intertwined. "You're here early." His voice came from behind me, warm and familiar. I turned to find him carrying 2 coffee cups, his suit jacket slung over one arm despite the hour. He'd clearly come straight from his apartment in the city, the one he'd kept separate from mine at my insistence. "Couldn't sleep," I admitted, taking the coffee he offered. "First day jitters. You'll be brilliant." He kissed my temple, a gesture that had become natural over the past months. "Though I'm surprised you're not more focused on the other meeting today. The foundation. Hope renewed, we'd called it, using money recovered from Pellegrini's seized assets combined with Lucas's own considerable contribution. The mission was simple, but crucial, helping victims of child trafficking reconnect with biological families when possible, providing therapy and resources when reunion wasn't feasible. I'd thrown myself into the work with the same intensity I brought to veterinary medicine. Maybe it was guilt over all the children I hadn't saved as a kid. Or maybe it was honoring Val's memory. Probably both. "Agent Mitchell confirmed the latest case this morning," I said, pulling out my phone to show Lucas the email. "A woman in Oregon, 28 years old now, trafficked from Santa Agnes in 2001. We found her mother living in Chicago. They're meeting next week. That makes 12 reunifications." Pride colored his voice. "Valentina would be proud of what you've built." "What we've built," I corrected, slipping my hand into his. "I couldn't have done any of this without your resources, your connections, your support. Over the past months, I'd learned to accept help without feeling like I was losing myself. Lucas had learned to offer support without controlling. It was a delicate balance, one we navigated through honest conversations and firm boundaries that I'd established early. I kept my own apartment in Queens, modest compared to his penthouse but entirely mine. I maintained my own bank accounts, my own career path, my own social circle separate from his world. We had dinner together most nights, spent weekends at the lodge when we needed peace. But I never moved into his space completely. It was the only way I could love him without losing myself in the process. "I have something for you," Lucas said, pulling a small envelope from his jacket pocket. Sophia sent it. Val's sister had stayed in Paris, but we'd remained close, exchanging weekly emails and video calls. She'd visited once, spending a week in New York meeting Lucas properly, sharing stories about the sister she'd never known. The connection we'd formed felt precious, a living link to Valentina. I opened the envelope to find a photo. Sophia standing beside an older woman in a care facility, both smiling at the camera. On the back, she'd written, "Mom had a lucid day. I told her about Valentina, about you both. She said she's sorry for what happened, that they didn't know. I believe her. Thank you for giving me my sister's memory." Tears pricked my eyes. Marie Dubois, Sophia's adoptive mother, probably hadn't known the adoption was illegal. Many of Pellegrini's clients hadn't, believing they were going through legitimate channels. It didn't excuse what happened, but it complicated the narrative in ways that felt important to acknowledge. "She looks happy," Lucas observed, reading over my shoulder. "She is. And she's healing. That's what matters." We stood together in the early morning quiet. Two people who'd found each other through tragedy and chosen to build something meaningful from the wreckage. Lucas had started therapy 2 months ago, finally confronting the guilt and grief he'd carried since Valentina's death. I went with him sometimes, working through my own childhood trauma, my abandonment issues, my fear of losing people I loved. It wasn't easy. Some days the weight of everything felt crushing, but we carried it together, and that made all the difference. "Come on," I said, finishing my coffee. "We have somewhere to be before the clinic opens." Lucas understood immediately. We drove to the cemetery in Queens, the small plot where Valentina was buried beneath a simple headstone. I'd visited once before, right after returning from Paris, but this time felt different. This time, I wasn't coming to report on a mission completed. I was coming to share a life transformed. The morning was cold but clear, autumn leaves carpeting the ground in shades of rust and gold. I knelt beside the grave, placing the white lilies I'd brought, Val's favorite flower that I'd learned about from Lucas's stories. "Hey, Val," I said softly. "It's Emma. I brought Lucas with me this time. We have some things to tell you." Lucas crouched beside me, his hand finding mine. Together, we told her about Sophia, about the reunion that had meant everything, about the foundation helping other children, 12 reunifications with more coming, about the clinic opening today, dedicated to healing creatures who couldn't heal themselves, the way Val had tried to heal broken children. "I hope you're proud," I whispered, touching both pendants at my throat, hers and mine reunited. "I hope wherever you are, you know that your death wasn't meaningless, that what you started we're continuing, that Sophia knows she was loved, even by a sister she never met." Lucas was quiet for a long moment, then spoke directly to the headstone. "I'm sorry I didn't see what you were doing. Sorry I wasn't there when you needed me most. But I promise you, I'll protect Emma the way I failed to protect you. And I'll make sure every child we can save through the foundation knows they matter, the way you believed they mattered." We sat there in the peace of the cemetery, 3 people connected by blood oaths and wedding vows and shared purpose. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the air, and I felt something settle in my chest that had been restless since childhood. Belonging, not to a place or a person, though I loved both the clinic and Lucas deeply, but belonging to something larger, a purpose that extended beyond myself, helping others the way Val had tried to help, healing wounds both literal and figurative, being part of a cycle of recovery and hope. When we finally stood to leave, Lucas pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my hair. "I love you, Emma Collins. Every stubborn, independent, brilliant part of you. I love you too, Lucas Ravellini. Even the parts of you that scare me sometimes." He laughed, a sound I'd learned to treasure because it was rare and genuine. Fair enough. As we walked back to the car, I took one last look at Valentina's grave. The sun caught the pendants at my throat, making them shine. 2 halves of a heart, carried by 2 women who'd survived impossible childhoods and fought to protect others from the same fate. Val's fight had ended too soon, but mine was just beginning, and I wouldn't face it alone.